Fearless Entrepreneur podcast team are a group of business owners sharing their career experiences, successes, and failures to help other entrepreneurs build a strong business foundation. Welcome to episode 2, Business Planning. Yeah, it was interesting. Like, the higher the alcohol content in the bourbon, the lower the rating was. Just to give the listeners a little vibe on what we were sampling, we had Angel's Envy, Weller's Green, Redemption, which is out of Indiana, which was very good. Benchmark, which is a good bottom shelf, but quite a good drinking one. OYO, which is an Ohio bourbon. Blanton's, which is a very rare and hard to find bourbon. Maker's Mark Cask Strength, and Watton, W-A-T-H-E-N. So yeah, we'll post in the show notes. We put the price, the name, how it ranked. Everybody gave it a 1 to 5, so we give like a total score, and then what the proof was. I won't spoil the surprise, but we will list you what our rankings were. We had 9 people voting across 8 different bourbons. So
well, and I want to say for the record that it was awesome tasting the booze. That was fantastic. But I want to file a grievance with the organizer because I feel like everyone should be wearing top hats and have a cigar.
This is the sound of a Blanton's bottle uncorking. And yes, I am sipping Blanton's as we do this podcast.
So, folks, we might have to redo this. So we're
Yeah, that's the beauty of a podcast done well, is that you're probably right on the edge of having to re-record the podcast.
Well, everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Fearless Entrepreneur podcast. And this week we're going to be talking about business planning. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Lunt, and I'm here with Matt Byrne and Matt Adams. So, we've been kicking around what our next episode should be, and we all felt that doing the dreaded business plan is horrible but necessary is probably the best way I can put it. It is something that we feel that every entrepreneur at least needs to be familiar with. So I'm going to kick it over to Matt. 100-foot level, what a business plan is.
Yeah, so if you're new to this, business plans, essentially the outline is going to look, with the following things. You're going to have an executive summary, a company description. You're going to do a market analysis. You're going to have your organization structure or management structure, your sales strategy, your funding requirements that you're going to need, and your financial projections. So you're going to have all of these elements to varying degrees in your business plan. So that's the overview. Matt, why don't you tell us maybe a little bit about how you use a business plan for your business and how it's helped you or hurt you or what you didn't do. Take it away. You tell us how business plans have worked for you.
Yeah, for me, a business plan does not have to be this super formal, in-depth 40-page document. Obviously, if you're shooting for venture capital, a very detailed, methodical, well-thought-out business plan makes total sense. But more often than not, a business plan is something that is a dynamic document. It's really supposed to be a roadmap for you as you evolve and develop your business. So, I remember a famous quote, or somebody taught me, plan your work and work your plan. It's very important to be deliberate about what it is that you're going to do in your business. We use a strategic planning tool called Traction, the entrepreneurial operating system in my organization. We'll put in the show notes, along with the bourbon information about how you can tap into learning more about that. But it's and I know some other people on this podcast have delved into that as well. But, it really talks about what our 1-year plan is, our 3-year plan, and our 10-year plan. It has some, quarterly objectives and some revenue and profit numbers. It's very, very easy to implement. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a totally set in stone, ironclad, concrete thing. And I think that can be debilitating to a business. If I feel it's important to plan and be very deliberate about how you're moving forward, but I also think it's important to be dynamic and be able to kind of pivot and change gears. I also always say that whenever you're getting started on your business or on a new division within your company, you want to divide your revenue by 50% and multiply your time by double. So if you think you're going to get to $1 million in 6 months, you're going to get to $500,000 in a year. So be very, very conservative on the revenue and how long it will take you to get it. You need to be looking at things like profit and loss and cost of goods sold, EBITDA, the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Those are things that your investors want to know about. You want to know if you're making money or not, so you don't need to be super granular if it's more of an internal document. And there's a lot of hidden costs, that a lot of people don't think about. Like, a $50,000 employee is actually $60,000 fully loaded when you talk about benefits and workers' comp and unemployment insurance. And also realize that if you make $100,000 this year or $1 million this year, 30% of that's going to go to the government in the form of taxes. So you need to make sure that you're budgeting and planning in accordance with the fact that you're going to have to pay tax on that money. And then the big thing that I think catches most young businesses is that accounts receivable. If you have a sales goal of $100, or $500,000 this year, you actually exceed it and you make $600,000, but you have $200,000 or $300,000 tied up in accounts receivable, you might get to wanting to distribute money to help you, with your family and pay the taxes, and might not have sufficient money to do it. So realize that the amount of profit that you make isn't necessarily the amount of money you have in the bank. So cash flow analysis and kind of getting some help and getting some technologies to help you show the ins and outs and the flow of cash in and out of your business is a key component to good business planning. But I think at just a fundamental level, you need something that's easy to implement, something you can review routinely and habitually, and something that can change as you change and your business goals change. But that's how I've done it, and those are some of the important things that have helped me with my business.
Yeah.
And those are awesome tools. So you've been in business a while. You've had a lot of success. What about the beginning? I mean, what did your business plan look like when you started?
I'd love to give you some really amazing, gilded, business plan, but I think and if you remember from a prior episode, we blew my father's retirement fund in the first 9 months of our business. And then we just, by the seat of the pants, started getting hungry, getting aggressive, and doing a lot of guerrilla marketing. And we were able to kind of build a business. We really didn't start planning until after the first year, maybe 18 months in, when we finally got a breath and said, okay, we just survived disaster, got lucky. Now what do we want to do for next year? And then how do we back into that? How many people do we need to hire to meet that goal for next year? How many new clients do we need? How many new sales calls do we need to meet those new clients? What technologies and instrumentations do we need to achieve these goals? So you kind of look at, all right, here's where we want to be. We want to get to $1 million. Now let's back into how do we build a company that will do that? And is that viable? Do we have enough money to do that? Do we have enough time to do that? Do we have enough expertise and talent to do that?
So do you think then that maybe you had a better plan in place that you wouldn't have blown through that money, or do you think that was inevitable?
It was inevitable, totally inevitable. Yeah, the plan had nothing to do with that failure. A lot of times you look at a market or you look at an idea and you get so enamored by the idea or the possibility of the idea. And, I think everybody's heard well, gosh, if we only had a 0.1% of market share, we'll be millionaires. Well, anyone who's actually beyond a year or two in their business knows that those types of projections and that pie in the sky stuff does not hold water in the real world. And so we were just in the wrong business segment. We didn't have the right technology, and we were trying to invent something that didn't exist, and that's hard to do. And we had to pivot to find something else that was more profitable.
Well, Mike, so you had mentioned in a previous episode, when we were talking about bootstrapping a business, and your spouse saying to you, well, I'm the bank here, so present to me.
Mm-hmm.
What's the business plan look like? What were you looking at? What did you present?
So what I presented was kind of a projection based off of the work I knew I was going to get, the reason why I was leaving my salary job. So I put that in there. I also kind of put together a plan of, okay, what comes next? How am I going to approach my marketing and my ability to communicate with new people? And that was honestly things like looking in the vicinity of where my house was and saying, okay, where's the nearest chamber of commerce? How am I going to get involved with them and try and, get out there as a video guy? The thing about the Chamber of Commerce that I was looking to join, I mean, I'm sure Chamber of Commerce works really well for some businesses, but it didn't really work well for mine. I gave a lot more than I I got. And so what I will say is it got me involved with networking at a really beginner level. And as a result, I ended up going to other networking groups. That was based on the fact that in my business plan, I identified that I needed to somehow get out there and tell people, hey, I'm a video guy and I can make a corporate video for your business. So that was kind of the first thing. And then obviously working out how much money would I need. As I said in our last episode, I started my business with very little money. I didn't need a lot to start. So I found what I actually ended up doing was putting a lot of fluff in my business plan, stuff that really I was never going to go back to and make sure I was doing, because it was written online on these big document format pages where it's like, okay, make sure you got this. And I was like, okay, well, I will make sure I've got this in my business plan. And I actually never went back to it and looked. I think when I wrote my first business plan for Parasol back in 2015. So it would have been February, March time, 2015. I ended up rewriting my business plan from scratch about 3 years later. I never actually looked at it. I never went back to it to kind of see, well, what did I put in there? I just started again because it didn't matter. It was irrelevant. My business model had changed somewhat. My approach had changed. My business experience had changed. Everything pretty much had changed. So what I found was I'd just written a document because I was told I had to. Was it a good exercise the first time around? Of course it was. But the main reason why I was doing it is I was trying to show my wife, look, the work that I have coming in plus the work that I think I can get on a short-term basis doing what I do will be enough to replace the wages I'm leaving behind. That was all it was. It was a document for her eyes, really. So I don't think I got as much value out of it as some people do. But that's because honestly, when I write something down, I'm just trying to get an idea out of my head and I'm already running.
So yeah, Mike, sounds like you were very similar in the way that I first started off with mine. But as I was moving on, I had this great idea, had this wonderful, I'm throwing air quotes around this wonderful business plan of the type of customers I was going to go after, which never came to fruition. I completely pivoted before then. So
yeah, it never does.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's good to be planning, but the plans are shit. But anyway, what I did find to be very, very helpful for me, because I mean, for the most part, I've got my own knowledge of the industry, but then I'm doing Google searches, right? I mean, you're trying to pull information and data from different places, but one tool that I have found, and that, full disclosure, they are not a sponsor, I found using a piece of software called LivePlan. It's an online tool, and for me, what was the most beneficial part about it, yes, it's going to get you through all the various steps and have you fill in the blanks, if you will, but was the industry benchmarks of other people that are using the plan. They're pulling from other tables and telling me, hey, a marketing agency like yours in the Midwest, this is your operating margin. This is what the average is. This is typically how long it takes for companies like yours to get paid. And having that kind of information and data, in addition to having sales history, became something that was very helpful for me when I was presenting to the SBA, Small Business Administration, for a loan to buy out my partners. Yeah. How about you two? I mean, have either of you used any software, anything? Was there any sort of resources that you can maybe help our listeners or point them to that you utilized?
So yeah, I actually used, it was a really nice online calculator. I think just to go back real quick to what Matt Byrne was saying about all the things that are usually included. I think one of the biggest things, and we will absolutely do an episode of this in the future. One of the biggest things that is forgotten is how much does it cost you to run your business every hour? Can you actually do the data on that? Like figure out the calculation that will give you a good understanding of what it costs every hour for your business to be in business, and then figuring out what your margins are. I have a great tool, especially in people in my field, in videography, photography. It's on the nppa.org website /calculator. And what it is, it's basically a tool that tells you, okay, put in your yearly expenses for all of these different things that you might have. So phones, for equipment, service repairs, your office rental, computers, that kind of thing. And it will spit out a number that will tell you basically how much it costs you to be in business. And then what you do and it will do it on a daily assignment. So it basically tells you how much you need to make on a daily basis for you to remain in business. So that to me was the biggest tool I actually found that helped me. I was using things like Pages or Microsoft Word to write my business plan. I didn't use any specialist software. And I was the, bare bones kind of guy where I was looking for stuff online. And I did go through the Small Business Development Center, the SBDC over here. And they kind of went through what I needed to include. But for the most part, I used this tool and it was great. So that's really how I found out the biggest bit of information for my business was make above this number and you'll be fine. So I think that's what, like I say, one of the biggest things that people miss out is truly understanding the data of their business and understanding what it costs to remain. You think that Apple or Coca-Cola or whatever don't know how much each unit that they push out to a customer costs? Of course they do. So it's the same kind of thing. You should know how your unit might be time, but you should know how much that time costs. And that should be one of the biggest things in your business plan is how you are going to make money above that number. And all the stuff in your business plan should be the thing that's driving you towards that goal. But what about you, Matt? Do you actually believe that you need a business plan before you get going with your business?
Yeah, I think that planning is a crucial exercise, even if you're not going to follow the plan, because it opens up your brain to different parts of your critical thinking and strategic planning, which is super important. Yeah, I'm more of a laissez-faire, instinctual entrepreneur, but because I am that, data is really important to me. Like I overemphasize data because my natural state isn't necessary to obsess about it. So I like things like what Mike said, or something I've heard before. It's like, listen, if you want to make $250,000, well, divide 250,000 by 2,080 hours, which is what the typical 40-hour work week for a whole year is. And that tells you how much every hour that you spend in your company costs that much money. And that's an important data point to know because, when you start saying how much you're going to charge for your services, so whether it be, I'm just going to do my own bookkeeping because I don't want to pay somebody $25 an hour to do my bookkeeping. Well, if you want to make, let's say, $100,000 a year and divide that by 2,080 hours, that's $48 an hour for you to do it yourself. So be careful on what you do yourself and try to outsource, but you got to budget those things. You got to plan those things. But at a minimum, you can say, this is how much I need to get paid for my services. And obviously $48 an hour does not take into account your overhead, your rent, your utilities, your insurance, right? So 48 is just the minimum. The cost of goods sold for your service starts at the $48 an hour you cost to do the service. I have a loose formula in my company is that everybody gets, if I'm going to bill out hours on somebody, it's double this number. And really triple. It's double this number to break even and triple this number to make money, right? Because if I'm $48 an hour, the overhead for me to be here, to have a desk, to have a computer, to have a website, to have a business cards, to have this laptop and this microphone I'm speaking into is another $48 an hour. And then I got to charge my clients 3 times that number just to, then that final third, that final $48 is profit. So yeah, I plan a lot and I measure a lot. I don't do a lot of very formal planning. I do a lot of kind of quick instinctual planning using the Traction EOS platform.
Yeah, so for me, it's like just kind of to springboard off what you just said as well. I think that part of people think that a business plan is a document that you keep on your cloud drive or whatever, or that you print out and stick in the corner where it collects dust. It's not. A business plan is something that you think about, implement, and make part of the everyday work that you do, so like everyday workflow. So for me, it's like when I complete a video, when I quote a video, I have a form that I use that is basically proprietary to my business. No one else has it because I designed it, and it will tell me the exact number down to the cents that I need to charge to make profit. It will also tell me how much profit I'm going to make. When the project is over, I can then put in the actual hours that I did on a project, and I can see what my actual project profit was, whether it was higher, lower, whether I made money or whether I lost money. And I can use that data to influence the way that I price jobs in the future. So there's that again was part of business planning. It was something that I put into effect so that I could plan better for future projects. And I think that's key. It's very, very important to think about how you're going to implement plans almost on a daily, weekly basis to help your business become stronger. It is not about putting it in a document that you're never going to open. So what about you, Matt? Like, how do you approach it?
Yeah, I think you can get hung up on your business plan. It needs to be a living document. You need to revisit it every once in a while and just look at it, make notes of how things have changed, reset, recalculate. And then the other big thing is, sometimes ideas, how they sound great in your head, but then you verbalize it and they're not good. Do the same thing with your business plan. Pitch it. Talk to your spouse or a sounding board, an advisory board if you've got it, or a good friend. Tell them this is what you're thinking. I think that's an excellent exercise in what you can do in evaluating your own document. Yeah. But yeah, definitely a living, breathing thing that you need to revisit. Matt Byrne, if someone says to you, yeah, I don't need a plan. I'm talking about a newbie, someone who's just leaving the workforce. They're done working for the man. They're going to start a business. They know everything there is to know about it, according to them. They don't need a plan. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think everybody needs a plan. If you're a consultant where you're just billing out a certain hourly rate, the plan is relatively simple. It's what your office expenses, what's your letterhead and website expenses. That can be a simple plan, but you still need a plan. If you have a more sophisticated widget manufacturing, raw materials, that gets a lot more sophisticated. Or most accounting programs would have this feature. You just say, okay, well, whether it be, hey, the last 3 years we've been spending about $800 a year on whatever office supplies. Let's go ahead and try to do better this year and budget that at $700. And our revenue's been whatever, $390,000 a year for the last 2 years. Let's try to get to $450. And it'll kind of show you every month where you're at compared to that budget, percent over, dollars over. And I think that's really healthy to look at your profit and loss from your accounting software program, but look at it as to what you set that budget to be. So, once you have the business plan, you can feed those budget dollars into your accounting software and say, gosh, why are we, 200% higher on our stationery this year? And then, someone would say, oh, well, that's because we did all those mailers that, that marketing thing that we chose to do. That's right. Okay. So it makes sense. We just didn't budget for it. And now you got to say, all right, well, where are we going to get that 200% that we spent in postage and stationery that wasn't expected? We got to manufacture that cost from, maybe we don't, expand the offices like we talked about, or maybe we don't, do something so that you're not getting to the end of the year where you've made 20 decisions to spend more than you thought you were going to spend. But if the revenue can't catch up with that, if you're 200% over on the revenue, then 200% over on your spending isn't the worst thing. But so it sounds like they have an upgraded version of that. But I think everybody needs some sort of planning. And for you, that might be a little bit more stripped down in an Excel document, or using your accounting software to just keep you on track and plan where you think you're going to go and document where you're at. And if you're going to try to get money from the Small Business Administration like Matt Adams did, or you got to pitch your spouse on why you think you can do what you're going to do, or get venture capital money, now you need to buy a software package and probably even get some guidance and help from your advisory board or a consultant to help you with that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I should also say that we're talking a lot about finance, accounting, even a little bit of legal in there. A lot of new people that are starting businesses, we see this a lot, and that kind of overwhelms them. Something that you need to be thinking about: you're an entrepreneur for all of about 15 minutes, then you become a business owner. This is a business plan. you need to become familiar with all these various elements. You need to know how to read a balance sheet. You need to know to understand a P&L. You're not doing a job plan. You're not just creating a job for yourself. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you want to grow and you actually truly want to create a business, you need to familiarize yourself with these various elements that we're mentioning here. I think that's, I was a graphic designer. I went to art school. I had a very long road to learn how to read these types of documents, understand these various specialties, right? I mean, I got an understanding. I hire the people now to take care of this stuff for me, but you need to have a strong working knowledge of these things if you're going to get into owning a business and being an entrepreneur. But again, I recognize that the title of our podcast is The Fearless Entrepreneur, but you are an entrepreneur just briefly.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think most people overlook is the nice thing about a business plan is we all assume that we're going to start a business and we will be around for it until we sell it or until we decide we want to close its doors or whatever it might be. But very few people think about the fact that, well, what if you die on the way to work or you just don't wake up the next day? A business plan also can serve almost as a will, if you like. It's not a will, obviously, that's set up separately, but it allows someone who wants to come into your business, who maybe you've appointed or a spouse or whatever, to come into your company and see what your intention was for the future. So they can obviously, they're in charge now. They could throw it away if they wanted to, but what if they want to honor your memory and they want to carry the business in the way that you intended? So the business plan also helps them see what your trajectory was and follow it. So that's really important because that helps people maintain course. So Matt, like, what's your view on it?
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. Not only is it a living document, but it's also almost like a will, like you said. But let's imagine that you even stick around, but you want to be doing less of the work. You want to be actually divesting yourself from it. So you can focus on newer and bigger markets. You can, grow the business to a different level. You can move on to a different phase of your life. The business plan gives everybody in your organization a roadmap of what we're supposed to do. And you do not hand this down from on high. What you do is you include your team to help you build it. And, the method we use, we review our business plan every single week for 90 minutes.
Oh, wow. That seems like a lot of time. Like genuinely, it does. I mean, 90 minutes is a long time at the beginning of the week to look at the same thing that's probably not changed all that much though, right?
Well, that's my point. It changes all the time. You've got, new quarterly goals that you've identified that are going to let you hit your annual target. You've got new roadblocks that prevent you from hitting that quarterly goal. You've got new action items that help you unblock that problem or make progress towards that quarterly goal. So it's a strategic planning document. It's a business plan. You think a business plan, set it, leave it in stone, and then a year from now we'll go and see how we did. For us, it's more like, let's look at it over and over again and keep fine tuning it and creating action items and strategies to help, lower the cost on that line item that's over on our P&L or increase the revenue because we're falling short of our expectation there. What do we need to do as a team to fix, the path we're on to help us hit the quarterly, annual, and 3-year goals that we set for ourselves.
So what would you recommend then for people who are solopreneurs, people that have their own business? You're obviously bouncing, and Matt Adams as well is the same way. You guys are able to bounce those ideas off of your crew. Whereas in my case, I'm alone. Well, not alone, but, I'm working primarily on things by myself and then bring in crew as I need. So how does someone in, say, my situation still do what your approach is?
Yeah, I mean, you're in an entrepreneur center. We're doing our recording here in the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, and being in a space like this, you have people that are in the same boat as you, right? So you've got folks that if you knock on someone's door, you can say, "Hey, if you got a few minutes, this is what I'm thinking in terms of my business," and you're going to get a lot of that help. So, if you are a solopreneur, finding yourself in a space like an entrepreneurial center, like the one here in Dublin, Ohio, or a co-working space. There's many out there. Most every city has them. That's a good starting point, because I think you're surrounded by people that are going through the exact same thing you are. In fact, that's how we all got here today.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a podcast version of that. You should be talking through your ideas, and if you can get yourself to the point where you've got a few trusted advisors that have your best interest in mind, create your own advisory board, if you will, that's a great place for you to be able to start talking through some of those ideas, and leaning on their experience. That would be my advice recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice, Matt, is advisory boards and surrounding yourself in communities of support. But also, I think a great untapped market for small and large businesses, people with and without employees, is asking your clients what they think. It's a perfect beta test, a perfect focus group. What does the market need? What does your organization need? How can I meet that? It's a great business development technique. It's a great budgeting forecaster, and it's a great way to get, other people's buy-in and direction on, how to plan your business. Ask people, ask your clients.
All right, guys, I think that pretty much covers our topic today. We're going to have a lot of stuff in the show notes, but first, before we do that, some key takeaways. For me, I suggest utilizing some software like LivePlan for you to help get you with those projections, those industry benchmarks. Matt, Byrne.
Your business plan needs to be evergreen. It's a dynamic document that needs refreshment constantly. Don't get stuck into a rut of what the business plan says. If it's not working, change it. If it's working well, double it up. And use Traction EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, a book by Gino Wickman. Look in the show notes for additional details on that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of the fact that the business plan is also somewhat of a will for your business. It's a good stepping stone for anyone who's going to step into your shoes, especially if you're looking to step away from the business. It gives them a good direction of where they're going to go next. And much like this podcast, I should say that this is a living podcast. We are going to be touching back on these topics, back and forth throughout the series, because we want to make sure that you don't forget any of this stuff. We don't want to kind of just touch on it in an episode and then never come back to it. So that's really important. So guys, I want to remind you that this podcast is available on Apple, Google Play in the US, and Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. We encourage you to subscribe to hear the latest episodes as they're released. And don't forget to give us a good review on Apple. You just give us a 5-star. It really help us out, and it'll help us to reach out to more entrepreneurs.
If you have a topic you'd like to discuss, post a comment below or on our Facebook page.
Speaking of which, don't forget that you can follow us on Facebook at the Fearless Entrepreneur Podcast, and you can also read more about each of us on our website, which is thefearlessentrepreneur.podcast.com. So that's all from us this week, and until then, stay fearless.